This video is sponsored by Surfshark. With Max Verstappen wrapping up his fourth consecutive world title, there is absolutely no question over how deserving of a champion he has been this season, and also that he is undoubtedly the best driver on the grid right now. Whilst the numbers and success behind what Max has achieved is impressive in itself, what has been interesting about 2024, especially coming off the back of 2023, is that this is a very different world championship to the one that he's won before. And now, a few years ago, I actually made a very similar video ranking Lewis's 7 world championships because I genuinely believe that some titles are worth more than others, especially with the right context, and in general, I think it's interesting to look back at which championships enhanced a driver's legacy the most. And now, Max is by no means done with winning championships, especially if he is given a competitive car, so I'm sure this list is going to continue to grow and evolve in the future, but as always, let me know your rankings and also perhaps a small reason as to why you have ranked them the way that you have in the comments down below. First up on my list, I have got 2022. Now, I must admit, I actually changed my third and fourth choices at the last second because there is definitely certain similarities about both of these seasons, but the strange thing is about 2022, when I look back at that season, for some reason it always feels like Ferrari were the bigger story than Max, in the way in which the season kind of collapsed before it even got started. There is no doubt that Leclerc made a lot of errors, but in terms of speed, racecraft and mentality, Leclerc was more than able to stand up to Max Verstappen, and they had some amazing battles at the start of 2022. Having said that, it really did look like Ferrari just weren't ready to challenge for a championship. I mean, I know that McLaren this season have come under a bit of fire for making some mistakes with Lando Norris, but Ferrari was a lot worse in 2022. They had strategy errors, they had numerous reliability errors, and just general incompetence, like for example in Hungary, where they never ran the hard tyre and didn't have any data on it ahead of the Grand Prix. Let's not forget that under Binotto, this team was a little bit of a mess when the pressure was really on, and of course at the end of the season he lost his job. And now, despite me looking back and kind of thinking more about Ferrari during 2022, I don't want to take anything away from Max because he was the reason why Ferrari never really were in a title battle. When it mattered most during the first part of the season, Max made Ferrari pay for every single one of the mistakes that they and Leclerc made. Whenever Max actually dropped points, there was almost always a reason for it that was basically out of his control. The 2022 season is one that promised a lot and had the potential to be an all-time great, but the reason why it's lower down in this list is because even if you put together the perfect start to the season for Leclerc and Ferrari, after the technical flaw directives came in Spa, Ferrari was never as competitive as they were at the start of the season, and so, in hindsight, there just isn't any scenario that Max would have lost that championship anyway. Max was always going to win that title regardless of the circumstances, but it was the combination of Max's brilliance and Ferrari's incompetence with too many mistakes from Charles Leclerc that I think puts this championship fourth in my list. And now, before we move on, let me just say a quick word about the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark VPN. Surfshark is super handy when it comes to watching content that is geo-blocked in your country, like you might have experienced on YouTube or Netflix, or just stuff that's only available to watch in other countries at that time. So for example, as some of you might know, I was recently on holiday in Japan, and whilst I was out there, I wanted to keep up with all of the F1 content on the Sky Sports F1 YouTube channel. However, unfortunately, most of their content, including their extended highlights, are geo-blocked for anyone that isn't in the UK. No problem, however, because with just a few clicks using Surfshark's Google extension, I set my VPN to be back in the UK, refreshed YouTube, and that's it. All of the F1 content that I needed, including the brilliant extended highlights, all available on the Sky Sports F1 channel from anywhere in the world. All you need is one Surfshark account, as it can be used on an unlimited number of devices, and by using my promo code ALDAS, which can be found via the link in the description, or by scanning my QR code that's on the screen, you can get a huge discount on Surfshark and get an extra 4 months for free as well. And on top of that, Surfshark also has a 30-day money-back guarantee if you decide to change your mind. So once again, a big thank you to Surfshark. And next up, in third place, I have got the 2023 season. And now, you might be able to already guess, judging from my list, that I don't value dominant seasons as much as I value competitive ones. It's not necessary that I think they're less impressive, but I think they're impressive in a different way, and I am always looking for drivers to prove something to me that I didn't already know about them. When it comes to all-time great drivers like Max, I expect them to dominate when given a dominant car. However, a record-breaking season like 2023, which is even different to other dominant seasons that other champions have had, is definitely an exception that just had to pip 2022. The thing that stands out about 2023 for me is that it wasn't just the dominant weekends that impressed me, but more so than anything else, there was plenty of races where throughout the weekend, the Red Bull wasn't a dominant car. Max's execution, however, throughout qualifying and then especially the race, made the car look more dominant than it is. However, this season is pretty simple, and it's one of those where the stats just do the talking. 19 wins in 22 races. He failed to win just 3 races all year. He of course broke the record with 10 wins in a row, and in terms of the records that he broke, most wins in a season, most points in a season, most wins from pole in a season, most hat-tricks in a season, most laps led, it just goes on and on and on when it comes to 2023. When we look back at 2023 in the future, I think that context is always going to be important because as impressive as all of the wins and all of the dominance were, this was peak Max Verstappen and peak Red Bull at their absolute best. A team and driver in perfect harmony, Red Bull on the operational side, giving Max the best pit stops even when he didn't need them, and a driver whose execution was so perfect that it made the car look dominant in every single race. But it's those races where the car wasn't dominant, where the competition was closer, those are the races that I think had to elevate this season above 2022 in my opinion, because the level of execution by Max was just something we have never seen before. I know for a fact, after listening to recent interviews after he won his 4th World Championship, that he considers 2023 his best ever season, and I totally understand it because from the driver's perspective, they want dominance, they do not want a close season, they want to win every single race and leave nothing on the table. But again, in my rankings, 2023 just doesn't quite stack up with the 2 seasons ahead of them, which are definitely something special. And next up and runner-up, I have got 2021. Now, of course, when you mention 2021, everyone always goes to the Abu Dhabi controversy, and I have said 1,000,001 times on my channel that I still think to this day that what Michael Masi did was an absolute disgrace. I have never seen anything like it in sport, let alone Formula 1, but I have always consistently said on this channel that it does not take away from the championship campaign that Max Verstappen produced, and in my opinion, he is a worthy world champion. I think both him and Lewis would have been. It's just a shame the way that season ended in the end. What's quite interesting about 2021 in retrospect is that, especially after Leclerc in 2022, Lando Norris in 2024, and even some of the title protagonists in 2018 like Seb and Nico Rosberg, it gives me a much better appreciation of what Max and Lewis did in 2021 because they really did set a different standard that season. 2021 saw the highest level of pressure and scrutiny that you will ever see in a championship fight. The fact that over a 22-race season, Lewis and Max finished 1-2 14 times is just ridiculous. They were above everyone else. I have never seen 2 drivers at their absolute peak, just sparring every single race and setting that standard. I mean, 2nd or 3rd place was a disaster of a weekend for both of the drivers, and that is the standard that they set. When it comes to highlights, there is almost too many to talk about when it comes to 2021, but in terms of performances, Max had everything across the range. From the incredibly dominant performances like in the back-to-back Austria races where he was just in a class of his own, and also to the comeback races where he needed to get a big result in against the odd circumstances, like in Russia for example, right very late in the season. Max proved in his first ever title fight that he could go toe-to-toe with arguably the greatest driver in the history of Formula 1 in his absolute peak. And there's no doubt that throughout the season he also got a little bit unlucky at times, like in Baku and also being taken out in Silverstone. Having said that, there was also some bad moments from Max, especially late on in the year with some really poor driving that was a little bit desperate because of the pressure that Hamilton was putting him under, like in Sao Paulo or Jeddah. But overall, I come back to that word, pressure. 2021 saw, in my opinion, the greatest title fight under the highest levels of pressure for both of the drivers, and Max came out on top, yes, in a controversial way, but there is no one that can convince me that he is not a worthy world champion after the incredible campaign, which was his first ever campaign that he put together in 2021. Of course, that just leaves one more season left, and in first place, I have got 2024. Yes, I think this season is Max's greatest championship season. Now, there's no doubt that the level of pressure that he was put under was nowhere near 2021. Lando Norris was nowhere near as good as Lewis Hamilton was, but the reason why, in my opinion, 2024 is a better season for Max than 2021 is because I think Max, as a driver, is much more complete. In the first 5 races, he had a bit of a continuation of 2023. He just dominated when the car was there, but from Miami onwards, where he lost basically no points compared to Lando, during a period where, in my opinion, the Red Bull wasn't the fastest car on the grid. And now, of course, this season, Lando and also McLaren, I think, underperformed relative to the car that they had, but Max was a massive reason as to why Lando underperformed. In a similar way to 2022, just I think McLaren had a much better car from start to finish. Max punished Lando and McLaren for every single mistake they made. He won races on weekends where the car wasn't the fastest, which is something that Lando was never able to do. He mentally dominated Lando, especially in high-pressure situations, and he just never allowed either Lando or McLaren to build any momentum. I think the most impressive race of 2024 was in Spain. That was the race where Lando really should have started his championship campaign, but Max just said no. Despite not qualifying on pole position, he jumped Lando at the start. He pulled off a very decisive move on George Russell very early on when he needed to during a critical moment. And it's those kind of races and it's those kind of moments throughout the season that I think were the most impressive, where he completely stopped any kind of momentum that Lando and McLaren could have tried to build. And ultimately, that's how he won the championship, because Lando was never really able to go on a proper consistent run, despite having the car to do so. And now, just as I mentioned for the other seasons as well, there was also some bad moments from Max this season, with some bad races and again some over-aggressive and really poor driving in wheel-to-wheel combat, like in Austria and in Mexico. But overall, when it comes to proving something that we didn't know, Max Verstappen proved, as he said to Zach Brown in a really funny interview, he can win a championship even when he doesn't have the fastest car. And although that Red Bull, I think it's important to say, is not as bad as the championship suggests, because it definitely wasn't the 3rd fastest car across the entire season, Checo's really poor contribution is the reason why they are that far down in the Constructors' Championship. I also don't think that it was the best car this season, and that in itself makes this championship something that we have never seen before from Max Verstappen. He was able to win so many races in against the odd situations where the car wasn't the best, and in the end, wrapping this season up with 2 races to go is not really indicative of how competitive the season should have been, but it is indicative of how dominant and how good Max Verstappen has been in 2024. Well, there you have it. Once again, a massive thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out my very special link in the description box down below to get an exclusive discount on Surfshark VPN, as well as 4 months free as well. And once again, a big thank you to Surfshark. If you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.